So, yeah, Karl Perry, you're here,
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our chat.
mate. Let me just sort this. The pleasure is all mine. I'm excited as always. Speaking to cool people. Firstly, how does it feel to produce one of these? So, for anyone listening, I'm holding up "You Only Live Thrice" by Mr. Karl Perry. Perspective is a superpower. Yeah, how does that feel, man? Because this is
Really
cool.
weird, really weird. Still, I've got a few copies dotted around the desk and whatever, and around the house, and I still find myself picking one up every now and again and just thumbing through, and it falls open or whatever chapter, and I find myself getting sucked back into it, remembering the time that I was writing about, remembering the time I was writing about it, and I've got to admit, I really enjoy still reading and reminding myself about where I was.
What's it like reading your own book? Because when I'm an avid writer. I'm not a very good one, but I enjoy writing. But when I read my own stuff, I'm like, most of this is garbage, man. At the
Yeah,
time, you think it's
yeah,
great. You speak about this actually towards the end of the book about the editing process, how, when you're writing it and it flows out of you, you think it's good. And then you read back and you're like, what was I thinking? So, yeah, like, you're one of the only people that I know that actually reads their own material.
Maybe that's an ego thing. I don't know.
No, it's good. Well, yours is slightly different, isn't it? I mean, yours, you go into quite some detail, which we'll speak about now. We might as well jump straight into this. So, look, 2019, you just turned 50, right?
Yep.
And life was looking pretty good because I think you were, thinking about stepping back from work a little bit, enjoying.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yep.
I was having conversations with. So it was my own event management company. I was already having quite in-depth conversations with my most senior employee about potentially buying me out. She was keen, I was keen, and that was my vision, to exit the business at some point in 2019. And when I started that year, I had a pretty good idea of who I was, I guess, where I stood, where my life was at, in that. Yeah, I just turned 50. I've been married for 21 years, got two great teenage lads who hadn't brought any trouble to our door. Event management business that I'd founded 14, 15 years earlier. I had a bit of an exit plan that was already beginning to play out. Fit, healthy, doing loads of cycling, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What were your plans then? What were you envisioning that this future with no troubles and no health conditions would look like?
That wasn't necessarily clear.
Okay.
And I think it's important to hold that in mind, that I didn't have something to go to.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get out. I just felt my energy reserves were beginning to drain a little. My enthusiasm for the business and that environment was beginning to drain. And I don't mean the team. I just mean the whole, event management experience. So, for example, when you're in your mid-30s, working away for a few days abroad, it can be great fun, even though you're only getting 4 hours sleep a day. When you get into 50, it's kind of like not so much fun. And did I have to be there? Sometimes, possibly not. But there's so many client relationships, that you've built up over the years. You don't want to let people down. So I was a very hands-on, present kind of owner manager.
Yeah.
But in terms of what I envisaged doing afterwards, no particular plan, which at the time I was very comfortable with, because I'm a big believer in that. If you open your mind to ideas, the universe will begin to present signposts and opportunities.
Yeah, it's quite exciting to have no plans sometimes, because I'm a planner. I'm regimented in my actions. I like to know what I'm doing, where I'm doing it. Next month I go to Iceland for 6 weeks.
Oh, love it there. Absolutely love it.
It's awesome, isn't it? And people are like saying, Alex, what are you going to do when you're over there? And I'm like, do you know what? I don't fucking know yet, which is part of the fun. So, you know, there'll be work, you know, I can work from anywhere now. There'll be adventure, and I'm not quite sure. And that's quite unlike me. But yeah, again, you refer to this in the book. Sometimes routine is quite a dangerous thing to slip into because, yeah, you know, you go years following the same routine and you realize you haven't really experienced much, or you haven't tasted much new adventure. And it sounds like from what you were writing about in the book that that's a little bit what you were after. You know, you'd reached this stage where you were like, all right, I'm open to not knowing everything. Because yeah, I always find that, especially with a lot of the guys I work with, Carl, like they crave certainty, and it's actually certainty that makes your life predictable and not so exciting sometimes. You know, yes, we need an element of it, but if you can handle uncertainty, then your life often becomes a little bit more fun and a little bit more free. So let's talk about what happened to you then in 2019. I'll let you tell the story because it was a big deal. Like, you know, something major happened.
Yeah, it was. And I apologize in advance for the length of this story, because it's almost several stories joined together. But our silly season for conference management was really sort of February to end of June. And about April time, I was on a job away for maybe 4 days. And I began to get a sort of it felt like just a typical kind of cold, bit of a bug kind of thing. In that when I breathed in, took a full lungful of air, I got a very cold feeling in the middle of my chest. And a couple of years earlier, I'd been diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, which is basically, I won't go into details, but it's an irregular heartbeat. But I was asymptomatic in that it didn't stop me doing anything. I cycled, I did hill walks, you know, absolutely fine. But my wife isn't one to let symptoms go by unnoticed. So when I came back from this job and I said, you know, I was on Lemsips and I was feeling shattered, she was like, oh, maybe we should, you know, have it checked out. Reluctantly, I went to A&E, and they were scratching their heads a bit, and they said, we honestly don't know, but we're going to start treating you for a minor heart attack, just in case. If you haven't had one, we need to do lots of tests. If you haven't had one, then the drugs won't do you any harm. And if you have, then, you know, all's well, because we're getting to the issue straight away. Well, you know, that floored me. First of all, I can't believe you're saying that about me. You know, me. We all have impressions of ourselves, don't we, in terms of what we're capable of and what applies to us. Heart attack, mild or otherwise, didn't apply to me. So I really just didn't believe it. But such was the case, was they couldn't do the particular test they needed at that hospital. And it took 5 or 6 days, really, following a transfer to another hospital for this test, an angiogram to be done. At which point they told me, good news, no heart attack. Whatever it was, it must have been a cold or whatever. Fantastic. Unfortunately, we have found a blockage on one of your arteries. It's just a bit too big for a stent. So we're going to put you in for a heart bypass next week. Well, you know, a week ago I was on Lemsips and now I'm having my chest open. How on earth has that happened? Again, it was like, this isn't happening to me. This is just not. This kind of stuff doesn't happen to me. You know, I'm too young. Surely this only happens to 80-year-olds or something, I naively thought. And then there was 2 weeks of 2 weeks of surgeons debating whether I could have a stent or whether I was going to have surgery. And then they decided eventually, yes, surgery is the way forward, but now you're not urgent because you've been completely stable and you've had no symptoms at all for 3 weeks. So it will be another 3 weeks before the operation. So you might as well just, you know, go home and wait it out. Because I was literally fully clothed, wandering around hospital with nothing to do. I was Tom Hanks in the terminal. There was, you know, I could go anywhere, and I was doing little errands for other patients. But I think they were sick of me, to be honest. It was like, who is this? But, you know, are you actually sick? You know, what are you doing in here? Yeah, so I got sent home. But then within 18 hours of being discharged, I had a sudden cardiac arrest at home, which it's probably worth explaining. People sometimes use heart attack and cardiac arrest interchangeably, which is understandable. But cardiac arrest is basically your heart stops and
Yeah,
you stop breathing,
you were dead.
you're dead. You're
You're
basically
dead.
dead.
Yeah.
You're basically dead unless someone intervenes and intervenes successfully. That's the challenge.
Well, luckily there was someone on hand.
There was, yeah, because this happened right in front of my wife, who just, you know, went into action straight away. And I mean, well, we might talk about it in a bit, but you know, yeah, if she'd been in a different room, or I'd been in a different room in the shower, or she'd nipped out to the shops or whatever, that, you know, we won't be having this conversation now.
No, I mean, when you think about this, there's so many different outcomes that could have took place, like you say, from where the incident happened. So, I mean, you know, if you're driving or if you're home alone, the outcomes, it's not worth thinking about. It's insane. And then you go on to talk about the fact that CPR is only 8% successful. Even in hospitals, it's only 16%. And then out of those 8%, you know, 4% of the 8 might suffer some form of, you know, long-term damage after.
Yeah.
So you think about all the odds that you've beaten and taken on. It's quite frightening. But I'll let you pick up from there, because the wifey stepped in and she saved the day, mate. She saved the day.
She did. She's a real life hero. I mean, really twice, in that she insisted. I wasn't going to bed, you know, that 3 weeks before without her. She would have got me to A&E one way or another. So even finding the blockage, you know, she saved my life, making people aware of it. But then obviously on May the 8th, when she just got on the phone and listened and did what she was told to do until the paramedics got there, was just incredible. And then within 3 days, I had the operation, and, you know, so began the recovery, which was challenging physically, mentally. But I got to the point where about a week after the operation, they moved me out of intensive care. And that, for me, I was always looking for the wins. I was always looking for even the little tiny wins, the tiny wins. And when I first got put on the back on the ward, it was in a room behind the nurses' station, which I just took at the time as being, wow, that was quite lucky, really, getting your own room behind the nurses' station. Of course, with hindsight, they wanted to keep an eye on me, and that was the best place. But in that move, this young male nurse, he was absolutely brilliant. He was just settling me in, and it's funny that transfer out of intensive care, that was the first time I felt emotion about the whole thing. And, you know, I was beginning to feel grateful for surviving, grateful for everything that everyone had done. And I was also, I had problems sort of keeping that in. But I remember saying to the nurse, well, at least it's a bit of a win. I've got a room. And that's when he said, any win's a win, and we take them all. And it kind of floored me. It absolutely floored me. It's a dead simple statement. And, you know, it's easily overlooked. It didn't mean anything to him, but it was like an uppercut to me. And it almost became a mission statement, because I began to think at that point that, God, any win's a win. Well, what it's saying is, you know, if any win's a win, you've got to celebrate all the little wins, because they all add up. But then if you've got to celebrate the little wins, what the hell do you do with a massive, huge win? Like, well, you were dead and now you're not.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, firstly, I think you've got to locate them, those little wins. So I think they bypass us every day, don't they? You know, they're happening all the time. Something I do at the end of each day, I just write these wins down, because you're not going to remember. So if I say to you, what were your biggest wins, or your 5 smallest wins from 3 days ago, there's no way you'll remember. So, you know, something we do inside the Better Man program is we write them down. And then at the end of the week, we will compile them into the biggest wins of that week. And then it's the biggest wins of that month. And then by the end of the year, we've got our 20 highlights. And it just helps you think a bit more positively. It helps you look for these wins, because the brain will give it what you tell it to look for. And yeah, you know, you're right. There's a lot of shit going on. So to dig out the wins inside of all that challenge and all that adversity is quite good. How long were you out for then? Because you don't talk about this in the book, and I'm not sure whether it's because you don't know, but like, how long were you officially dead for? Because
11 minutes.
Karina that was pumping your chest, but I'm not sure whether you came round after the paramedics had arrived or before.
Yeah, so it was 11 minutes. It was 11 minutes anyway from the call being logged.
Wow.
To the paramedic recording that there's a term for it, and I can't remember what it is, but it basically means your body is circulating unaided.
Yeah.
So that was after the second shock. They gave me
11 minutes. Shit, Carl. I thought it was going to be like 2 minutes max, 3 minutes, but 11 minutes is a long time to be dead, man.
Yeah. that could be the sequel.
Well, look, there's something you're saying. I've got to ask you about this, because this quote from your book, it offered me some comfort, but I was a bit disappointed to read this as well. And I'll read the quote. It says, "I've been to the other side," meaning you've passed, and there's nothing there. So they were from your words inside of the book. So what you were saying there was like, you didn't know that you were out of it. There was no tunnel. There was no reunion with past family members. There was none of that. It was nothing. And like I say, that was both reassuring. I haven't got to deal with the demons of my past, and I'm not going to be punished for all this shit. But I was like, really? Is that it? When you die, and you're gone? Like, is that kind of like, is that affected now what you think about a potential life after death scenario?
Well, to put things in context, and I make this clear in the book that I'm an atheist. I'm a pro-faith atheist. I'm more than happy for you and anyone else to support follow whatever religion you want, provided you don't try and force it on others, particularly me. So it did occur to me whether because I was an atheist, that us atheists don't get to see all the good stuff in the afterlife. Maybe we get put in some holding pen until we're dead. You're not out till you're out. Maybe that's it. I honestly don't know, but all I can tell you is I was literally mid conversation with my wife, and then it's like cutting a movie mid frame and then fading into a completely different movie, and there was nothing in between. I can't even say I heard noises or it was black or anything. There was just nothing at all.
Well, yeah, Ricky Gervais says that that feeling before you were born, like he thinks it'll be like that when you die. There is nothing at all. But it's strange because there's all sorts of stories and experiences from people who've had the exact opposite. Where they go through the tunnel, where they see all sorts of different things. So it's amazing to me how somebody can just say it's just nothing, and then other people have this these crazy images and these crazy experiences. So yeah, whether it is the fact that the atheist in you is that's your lot, I'm not sure, but it was interesting to read that. And like I say, it came with both reassurance and a little bit of disappointment, because you like to think there might be something good waiting for us after this life, or something better, but you kind of ruined that for me.
I'm sorry about that.
All right.
But it did help me focus, I guess, in that, again, when you actually start distilling it down, if we're lucky, we get about 80-ish orbits of the sun. I'm 53 now, so we can start doing some maths, and there might be 25 to 30 or whatever left.
Yeah.
The last few years might not be in the most wonderful of health. Of course, we all hope not, but let's say there's going to be a few slower years towards the end. You can actually begin to go, well, there's 25-ish summers. Let's
I
enjoy them.
always tell people this because I read a book called 4,000 Weeks. So whenever we talk about lifespan, I always remind people that it's about 4,000 weeks. I think takes you up until 80 years of age. So it sounds like a lot, but when you're 30 or 40 or 50, you start to think, well, shit, it's only 1,500 weeks. If I lived till I'm 80. So as this experience then of being dead for 11 minutes and kind of having nothing there, has that quashed any fears about like death and all the things that are waiting for you? Like, has it removed any of that fear and you can enjoy things more because there's nothing to be scared about moving forward?
Yeah, I don't think I necessarily had any fears about death anyway. It's not something that I'd ordinarily worry about, but it's focused the mind in terms of trying, making sure you've got to do your best to try and do more of what you enjoy and a bit less of what you don't. But what it has also made me appreciate is that, let's say death is this sounds like a crazy sentence, but if death is the worst thing that can happen to you in life, then anything else that happens is surely not going to be as bad. And therefore that's actually stripped out a lot of irrational fear over making decisions or taking actions, trying things. Fear stops us all trying things, I think, as freely as perhaps we could. And that I think has been, I'm not saying it's gone altogether, but I'm aware now I can apply something to it and go, well, hang on a minute. Is this a rational fear? What? No, it's not really. So it's certainly not as bad as, if being dead is 10 and everything else is less, and then whatever I'm thinking about and projecting fear onto it's got to be less.
Yeah, and it's quite a stoic approach to remind yourself daily, and I don't think you can have any more of a reminder than what you got of, like, you can literally die at any point, because I think we all assume that we've got X amount of time, and like you say, even though we know things can happen, but even when they do, we're filled with shock because we never think it's going to happen to us, or we never think it's going to happen to our loved ones. But you raise a really great point in the book about the fact that, like you say, if you hadn't come around from that cardiac arrest, then for you, I mean, it would have been over. So there's no pain for you. But what's more concerning and worrying is the fact that, like, everyone else gets damaged by it. So I think you referred to this as well. Like, if I get cancer, then it's terrible, right? But I can deal with that, I think. But telling the people around me I think in my head, is worse than getting the fucking cancer itself. And that's the thing, isn't it, with illness and disease and death? It hits other people as well as yourself. So you've got your own shit to deal with, and then you've got the fact that this is going to hurt the people that I love most. Because I read some quite challenging books, and they point out quite rightly the things that we love the most are the things that cause us the most pain. So you can't get involved with these things that make life worth living, that don't ultimately make life really, really challenging when they're taken away from you.
That's right. I mean, they say that grief is the price you pay for love. And that makes perfect sense, doesn't it, really?
It does. It sucks. I hope you weren't coming on this podcast to have a light-hearted conversation, Carl, because we're only like 23 minutes in, and we're talking about death, cancer, heart attacks, and grief. But yeah. And that's one. Look, I'll be real open and vulnerable on this. That's why I find it hard to attach to most things, because that with that attachment, there's an element of potential pain. Like, even I lost my best mate Benson, who was a dog, in lockdown. He was only 6. I loved him to bits, but when you get a dog, you've got that heartbreaking moment of not having the dog around.
Yeah. And
a lot of people who suffer just the loss of a pet will say, I'm never getting another dog again because I can't deal with the pain. So we know that, yeah, you're right. To invest in that means that you are so vulnerable, because at any point that great thing in your life could be ripped away from you. And I think, especially if, like, your purpose is in those people around you, like, it's hard if they get taken away, because that your purpose gets taken away. So I hear a lot of guys that I work with say, my purpose is my kids, And I think that's great. But I'm like, well, yeah, God, like everything is determined on them and their future. This is why I think parents suffer so much with traumas and grief, because, you know, if they see their kids going in a path that isn't always the most productive, like they find it really, really difficult to deal with, which makes sense, doesn't it? So there's so much going on for you at that time. I think that's my point. Like, what happened to you had everyone else worried as well, and that could only add to your stress as well. But you seem quite relaxed, like the way you write your book. By the way, it's a fantastic read. I'm going to urge anyone to read it because it's funny as well. It's really fucking funny. And you write about this, you know, this serious topic. You know, you're writing about life and death ultimately, and you know the lessons that you get from it. But it's really funny. But you do mention that, you know, it's the stress that it put on your wife. You were cautious about telling your children about the full details as well, because, you know, obviously you didn't want to worry them. So you had all that in the mix as well, didn't you, to deal with and to navigate?
Yeah. Yeah. All of that's true. And then something began to happen that I hadn't realized, in that I was then beginning to add stress and concern, you know, onto my wife, because I began to physically recover, and I wanted to do more and more for myself. And of course, she was, I'm not going to say, no way was she wrapping me up in cotton wool, but she was, well, you know, are you breaking out into a bit of a trot when you should still be walking here? That, you know, that kind of thing. And I just wanted to start forging ahead, because my goal was to get back to the quality of life that I had before, or higher. I wasn't prepared to be chair bound, or, you know, shuffling around the block, and that being my walk. I wanted to get back, you know, on the bike in the hills, and doing all that kind of stuff. So I guess that rang a few alarm bells, and that caused a few, you know, a few tears when you try to push harder than perhaps you should. But that's that. I don't think I could have handled that, you know, any other way, to be honest.
Yeah, and how hard do you push? You don't know until you test those limits a little bit. But where did you get this mental resilience from? Was this something that you've learned or trained? Because whilst you were going through this, and you know, you go into a lot of detail about how it was for you whilst you were in hospital, and quite frankly, it sounds like chaos. You know, you were being told one thing by one doctor, one thing by another, and there was debate and miscommunication, and there wasn't a lot of reassurance for anyone who was, you know, about to go into that situation. But you know, it was an honest description. So yeah, where did you get this ability to, I guess, just, you know, you seemed quite calm when it was all happening, and resilient, and yeah, quite tough. Like, where's that come from?
I honestly don't know. Apart from, I've always been a big believer in focusing on the process, and trying to. I guess it's no coincidence that I went into event management, because you know, you try and control as much as you possibly can, but there are always going to be issues, but you solve them one problem at a time, and there's no point in over worrying about things that might happen. If you plan well, then they shouldn't. But in hospital, where all of that is ripped up, and there's a lot of uncertainty, I don't know, I still felt this need. Well, they were in two stages. So before the cardiac arrest, my frustrations did surface, you know, a few times, but I felt I had to trust in the process. I might not have appreciated or agreed with the process always, but I had to have faith in the process. And then post cardiac arrest, in those sort of 3 days in the cardiac care unit waiting for the operation, that was quite a surreal time, because I did feel like I could feel it myself. I almost stripped out all emotion. And someone recently gave me an analogy which I think fits it perfectly, which is, you know, in life you can be in a bit of a storm. You're getting buffeted all the time in life. You know, the car breaks down, or the boiler breaks down, or whatever, you're running late, or there's, you know, through no circumstances your own, you've got some negativity thrown your way. And then occasionally there's a hurricane, and I was in a hurricane, and everything was getting smashed up. Everything around you is getting smashed up, and you don't know which way's up. You could be smashed to pieces any second. And somehow I got myself to the eye of that storm, where it's calmer. And I was kind of looking at all of these events going on around me from that point of calm. And I absolutely have no idea where it's from. I can only say that I think it was some kind of really basic survival instinct. You know, I was very, very aware that the last thing that my body needed was high heart rates, high erratic, high blood pressure, all of that kind of negative energy around me. So I somehow got myself to a calmer place where I remember thinking there's actually very little point in worrying, because the first thing I've got to do is survive to the operation. And if I don't do that, then it's all over anyway. And then I've got to survive the operation. So let's get through that. So there's very little point in worrying. And then it's survive immediately after the operation. But there's very little point in worrying. It's, just focus on the process of trying to control as much as I can emotionally and physically, I guess. You didn't always feel like eating, drinking and whatever, but force myself. And yeah, it was a really stripped back emotional Karl that was in there. And I was aware of it at the time. I really was.
It sounds almost like surrender in a positive way, where especially for driven and ambitious guys, hardworking guys, the thought of being in hospital sounds like a nightmare to me, because I'm a doer like yourself. But I think at that point you probably have to just say, I can't do anything from here except, like you say, accept the situation, surrender to what is. Because I think arguing with reality is one of the most painful and tiring things you can do. So I think, yeah, you're right. That would have been probably the worst strategy you could have taken, especially when we're talking about heart conditions. So a lot of heart conditions, they're not going to be helped by anxiety and stress and worry. We know that. But knowing and doing are two very different things. So knowing worrying isn't going to help may not make it easier not to worry. So, advice given out by people, don't worry about it. It's not really a good strategy, is it? It's not a tactic. But I think acceptance is one of the things we can do when we stop fighting what has actually happened. Because like I say, the odds were against you. Like when you go through the maths, when you go through the scenarios, the possibilities, all of the outcomes, and you refer to parallel universes quite a lot in your book about, is there these universes going on? I'll let you explain the parallel universe concepts, because you'll explain it a lot better than I do. But is there another world dimension where, you weren't resuscitated, or you didn't have that heart attack? Do you think that these outcomes are real, or are you just talking about them in terms of just crazy concepts?
I don't know if they're real. I know at the time, so I began to think about these once I got home. And by coincidence, so I think I got back about the 1st of June, something like that. And then there was Father's Day coming up. There was my eldest son's 18th. There was, his A-levels. He got his first car. There was our wedding anniversary, the other son's birthday, going off to uni, and all this kind of stuff going on. Quite significant events. And I couldn't get it out of my head. Each time there was a significant event, a few days before, I began thinking, I wonder what this would have been like for them if I hadn't been here. It would have been horrendous. It would have happened. All those things would have happened, but it would have been awful. And then I began to feel sorry and upset for their sorrow, for their how they would have felt had I not been there. And I've got no idea why I gave this any oxygen at all, but I did. And that's when it began to dawn on me. Oh, well, what if that's the case? It just seemed too crazy that an 8% chance success. I never regard myself as being that lucky. So there's a 92% chance you should be dead and not here. So really, there's a better chance of that universe existing than this one, which troubled me greatly.
It's higher than 92% though, isn't it? Because like you say, when you take into account, you had to be, Karina had to be there. You had to be in a safe place to have the cardiac. Do you know what I mean? When you really knuckle down to it, it's even slimmer than that. So yeah, the odds of the CPR working and that, but to even be in a position where you can have CPR is one thing.
Yeah.
But that concept of these parallel universes, it just blows my mind. And there's people out there a lot smarter than me that believe these are true and that these exist. So there's potentially millions of Karl Perrys wondering which is a frightening thought.
Well, it really is, and unfortunately, I googled this a bit at the time.
Mate, that's something you never want to do.
When you start seeing quantum physics theories about infinite numbers of parallel universes, I just thought, well, that's it. Then it's got to be true. Is this the real universe? Am I the plan B? Is the real one somewhere else?
This is crazy talk because the reason why I think religion is hard to debate and God, because it's such a crazy concept that God exists. And I was thinking about this as I was in the sauna. I do some of my best thinking in the sauna because it forces me to, no mobile, nothing, no work. And I start thinking about these crazy situations. And I was thinking about our chat tonight coming up because, there's a lot I want to speak to you about. And I thought, the concept of God is crazy. But then I thought there's a lot of crazy realities out there as well. So the universe in itself is ridiculous when you think about what it is. And even Earth and what's happening, it's insane. So I'm thinking, well, maybe the concept of God isn't that crazy. If parallel universes are being discussed, then the idea of the concept of God is just as ridiculous, perhaps. So, but there's crazy things happening all the time that are, we can't explain, but they're happening. The universe is the best one that I can think of, and for you to go down that road, I think it's understandable going through what you've been through. And I also think there's an element of, I don't think you can control necessarily what pops into your head, Karl. I'm not sure what you think about this, but like, where do the thoughts even come from? Like, what makes that jump into your head and then for you to try and process it and work it out? Where do they come from?
Tough question. I don't
know. You know the answer, by the way. I'm just throwing it out there.
But as blokes, I know that we're very guilty of, if we get one of those kind of questions that comes into our heads, we try and fix it. We try and come up with the answer. We try and fill. There's a vacuum there. I don't really know what the answer to that is, but let me just speculate a little bit, and then whoa! I don't like that crazy answer I've just come up with. Yeah. It's a little bit like that, isn't it? It's
sure.
We try and I guess that's how the notion of God or gods came about, in that over time people asked themselves questions, they didn't know the answer to them, so let's just fill in that blank with this.
It's difficult to know how much time in your life you should spend questioning things versus just living. I think the danger is just living is that you could bypass some things that are really, really important, that perhaps if you'd have slowed down and questioned, may have made your life a bit more better or more meaningful. But there's also, I think you can tip the other end of the scale, can't you? When you end up questioning everything and you spend too much time investigating things that inevitably you're never really going to find the answers to anyway. So will me and you ever work out where there's parallel universes? Probably not, right? So it's like, how much do we need to question it? But it's a juicy concept. It's interesting. I like the idea. I mean, I don't know what you discovered through your Google research about parallel universes and what you can tell me, but it's like, where do you stop? Where do you draw the line at questioning?
Yeah, what I discovered was that quantum physics seems to suggest that there could be an infinite number of parallel universes, because why would it stop at 482?
Yeah, it wouldn't. Can you even get your head around that concept? Can you even let your brain think about that being a possibility? Because I struggle to even envision what that would look like or what it even means.
No, well, obviously I was applying it to myself. So
Yeah.
I started thinking, well, I might be dead in one and I might be alive in all of the others, because it's kind of like you're either dead or you're alive. So
Yeah.
there'll be one where I'm dead, and then there'll be an infinite number minus one where I'm in a various state of physical and mental disability. None of those options filled me with joy. You know, difficult to shake out. But after a few months of it, and it was months, it just hurt my head, and I had to let it go and go, this is ridiculous. I've got to put my eggs in one basket here, and here I am. So, you know, let's focus on this one.
And you're assuming that consciousness would occur in all of those parallel universes, i.e., they're all as real as what this one feels.
That was the premise I was working from,
yeah.
And that I would be, you know, locked in. I imagine scenarios, multiple scenarios where I'd be in some way locked in, which just filled me with horror. I mean, can you imagine I should have gone to counselling. I really, really, really should have gone to counselling.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting thing, you know. And the more I'm talking to people who've had sudden cardiac arrests, that seems to be a missing part of the circle, really. And that, you know, that you get fixed, you get sorted out from the critical stage, and then you go home to recover. But pretty much from a mental perspective, you're left on your own. And almost everyone is saying they have some kind of mental challenges, and it's understandable, you know. Sure. When you think, and not just for the patient, but also perhaps for the person who did the reviving.
Of course. Well, surely it's a traumatic event for you and your family. I would think it would be classed as a traumatic event anyway. I just never assumed otherwise. So the fact that there is no procedure in place, but as you mentioned in the book that you didn't want counselling at that time, you wanted to go through the process and kind of, you know, challenge it on your own, didn't you? I don't know whether going back now you would change that perhaps and discuss more openly with somebody like a counsellor, but I don't know, what do you think would have come from that? Like, would you have liked just to talk it through? Would you have liked to talk about the trauma itself, or would you like it to have helped you put into a plan going forward? What do you think the benefit of the counselling would have been versus not having it?
I think I probably would have got to the same point, but quicker.
Okay.
I think they would have questioned me. They'd have not questioned me. They'd have encouraged me to think things through a little more rationally, in terms of these parallel universes, things like that. But the one thing I don't think you can get away from is, I think by any other definition, you know, it's PTSD. You're dealing with something enormously traumatic, that you're just not equipped to deal with because you haven't got any other comparable experiences.
I don't want to butcher this because I'm not in the profession, but I think they will say if something is troubling, like some form of event has happened and it's 18 months or more and it's still troubling you, you're still losing sleep over it, or you still can't process it, then it's classed as post-traumatic stress disorder. But again, when you know, after reading the book, I would think that would be totally normal to experience some form of trauma. When you say you would have reached the same point, maybe faster, what is that point that you refer to?
The contentment that where I am alive, you know, now or at that point, is the natural state of affairs, is the natural state of being. Is that, you know, you were in this universe before the incident, and here you are now still in this universe. So, you know, that's the scenario, and I think that's probably where I got to. I could have taken it further. I guess I could have kept, you know, banging my head against this door, trying to get through, trying to understand it. But it got to the point of it's too much energy. it began to get exhausting. And have you ever had that feeling where you're just tired of feeling tired?
Sure.
Thinking about something. And it's actually a lot easier to let go of then once you feel that kind of exhaustion. I don't think I've resolved it, but I just can't do it anymore. I'm just not going to think about it anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's pros and cons to that. So I think there's some challenging things in our lives that, if we just stuck with and buried a bit, of course, there's going to be resistance. And there might be an argument to say, some things are worth holding on to and doing a bit more of the digging, and some things need letting go.
Yeah.
How you decide that, I'm not sure. But I spoke to my friend yesterday, he's a full-time counsellor. He's a great guy. And he said the most common problem that he's seeing right now is people are literally just burnt out and exhausted. And it's become the normal to be overworked now and to be tired all the time. But once you were out of hospital and discharged, I was expecting it to be a happy ending. But unfortunately, like, the challenges that you faced when you left hospital were in front of you as well. And it was quite upsetting, actually, the last 4 or 5 chapters of the book, because obviously you had the trauma of your mom passing away, which was really sad to read. She came around for Christmas in good spirits, and that was fast, her deterioration. And then, I can relate to your struggles with the business, your staffing issues, recruitment issues, all the things that, might sound small, but I just know how draining they are mentally, physically. So, you'd come out of hospital ready to live this second life, as you called it, to start fresh. And yet, again, life kind of just stepped up and said, hold on, Karl, I'm not fucking finished with you yet. Like, we're going to throw this more of this shit at you. So, yeah, how did you go on to deal with the passing of your mom, the closure of the business? Again, COVID kind of stepped in and saw to the end of that. Like, because everything changed for you then, like everything.
Yeah. So I guess by the end of the year, by Christmas, I was really of the opinion that I felt in a worse place than where I was before anything had even happened. And I felt, and this was largely down to staff recruitment and things like that. In fact, there was nothing on my radar that hadn't been on my radar before that I hadn't dealt with. It was all everyday owner manager type businessy stuff. But because I'd promised myself this second life of maybe 3 days a week, I was going to be exiting the business, and that wasn't happening. In fact, I was 5.5 to 6 days a week, and evenings as well. I felt robbed, and I felt like it was unfair, and I wasn't getting my second life. Not only was I not having my first life, I'm not even getting my second life. And then obviously Mum died. And it became apparent around that kind of time that, well, I began to feel really annoyed with myself for only looking at one strategy to exit the business. And I could see actually it wasn't going to work. She wasn't, whatever the barriers were, we would have already, got over that if she was absolutely determined to take the business on. And then it coincided with COVID. And then I had no business. It was like everything got cancelled. All my events for the year got cancelled over 4 days. I sent everyone home to work because we had to go. Then there was months of cancellations and refunds and things like that. And I remember thinking, wow, now there's not even anything to sell. I felt even more robbed. And I had one plan, which was to mothball the business and just kind of tick it over on life support until such times as COVID had gone and, events were back. The problem with that strategy was, how long's a piece of string? Can your reserves outrun the length of an unknown pandemic? And we would have just burnt through the reserves. And then I would have been left with nothing. So eventually I took on this notion that the universe had given me a way out. It wasn't the way out I wanted. But it basically said, if you close the business, then you're out. Because that's the other thing. When you own a business, you don't have the contract, do you? No one's giving you a contract. You can't give yourself 4 weeks notice or whatever. You can't just walk away from it. There's no quick exit for you if you want to, whereas every member of staff can do that. So I felt stuck, trapped, suffocated. And therefore, I guess I kind of flipped it a little bit in saying, this is a really shit thing happening to the world and to my business. But there is a bit of an opportunity here, because if I close the business, then I am out, and I've got myself some breathing space. What I do after that, I don't know. That we'll worry about that later. And so that's what I did eventually. By the autumn of 2020, I initiated the closure process, and by the end of the year, it was done. But then that left me with that big challenge of, I was almost where I was going to be had I actually genuinely exited the business, which was, okay, you're out the business. There's a bit of money left. Blank canvas. What are you going to do? You didn't have a plan then. You haven't got a plan now. Only it terrified me at that point. Being 52, no company, no job, no career, no formal training, and at 52, how do you reinvent yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying / exciting. So what happened from that point? Or are you still trying to work this out, or is that the wrong question because you don't work it out, you just do?
Yeah, I think that is a lot to do with it, to be honest, Alex. I think you can overthink it. I think do the action is the first thing. And the first action I did was start writing stuff down just to get it out of my head. It was cathartic. I just wanted to write down the sequence of events, because I kept thinking, if someone had said to me at the beginning of 2019, right, just sit still because this is what's going to happen. Okay, you're going to have no say in it. You're going to die. You're going to have a heart bypass. Then your mum's going to die. And then your 15-year-old business is going to die on top of the millions of people around the world because of a global pandemic from a disease that is not yet known. You go, this is just Hollywood. What a shit Hollywood script that is. That's too much. That's ridiculous. But that's what happened. So I felt by the end of that year, by the time I'd closed the business fully, I felt I was 3 events behind. That hadn't fully processed the cardiac arrest. I hadn't even begun grieving for my mum, and the loss of my business. So to help me with that, I started just writing, capturing it all, getting it out of my head.
Yeah, it amazed me how you remembered it all so well. So I know when I try and go back to some of my most difficult times, it all just seems like such a blur. So you've done an incredible job in structuring the book and taking us through a journey, and it's a page turner, man. It's a real, yeah. So I really enjoyed it. It's a challenging read because a lot of what you're writing about, it's tough stuff. It's stuff that we'd probably rather turn a blind eye to. So the fact that you got it out there is great. Is there another book in you? Did you discover a passion for writing, or was it more telling your story that you enjoyed?
So definitely the latter, but I think I rediscovered my interest and passion for writing, because since I've done that, I've kind of looked back a bit, and it's funny, when you actually start going back through some memories or events in your life or whatever, I think, oh yeah, there's evidence here that's beginning to suggest that I do enjoy writing. For example, I've written scripts for fun, for my own play. I don't play golf, but I've written a few scripts just for enjoyment, one with someone else. Nothing's ever happened to them, and they're awful, but it doesn't matter. It's the process, the enjoyment of that. I've written short stories. I've had a go at, even as young as sort of 18, 19, I've had a go at writing kids stories. Even last summer, whilst on holiday, a friend and I started writing a kid's, somebody I was on holiday with, started writing down the first few chapters of a kid's book just for fun. So looking back, I'm thinking, actually, there might be a bit of artist, for the want of a better word, in me. So, I might, it's something I'm going to explore anyway. Look, I've got 25 more orbits. I might as well explore it.
Yeah, absolutely. We do a lot of, I do a lot of work with the guys on this because it's something I'm continuously doing as well. It's like looking for clues about because the clues are there about what you enjoy. And you kicked off this podcast today by saying, life's about doing more of the things that you enjoy versus not. And that's a very simplistic way to think about life. But often when we look at what we're doing day to day, not many people live like that. We don't always follow the simple guidance that we know to be true. And if we do create more, creation's about fun as well. And something, especially a lot of guys, and I struggle with this, is just to do things for fun. So if you're a business owner like yourself, like me, like usually it's like, well, our action has to be productive today. Like it has to get us closer to our long-term goal. If it's not, it's a waste of fucking time. And that's not always the case. Just to sit down with a piece of paper and a pen sometimes, to just let the stuff come out your head, or to play guitar, or to watch a silly film, or just to do something creative, and like you've just mentioned, without any real purpose. So you can write a script without needing the ambition to write a movie. Yeah,
correct. But it's funny you should say what you've just said, because I started writing in the December time, I think, of 2020, and by about March, I kept it very quiet. It was a very private, personal thing. But by about March, people are asking me, well, what are you doing? Because they always ask that, don't they? Well, what are you doing? What are you going to do? So, well, actually, I'm just doing a bit of writing. And most people are like, oh, okay. But one particular person, their response surprised me a little bit. And this is someone I've known for quite a few years. And he was like, oh, wow, right. What? So you're gonna write a book then? You're going to publish a book? Well, no, it's just for me. And he looked at me and said, well, what's the point? Oh, right. Okay. But then I could say to him, well, do you play golf? Oh, yeah, play golf. Yeah. Well, you're going to go to Augusta and play at the Masters. Well, don't be stupid. Well, what's the point?
Yeah.
It's sometimes you can do stuff just for the sake of the enjoyment you get out of the doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a good friend called Matty Evans. He gets really pissed off because he's not officially working right now. And like you say, people just can't get their head around it. So they're like, well, then what the fuck are you doing? Like, do you know what I mean? And he's just like, right now, I'm just being. I'm just being. And the best things in my life have always come from creating space, like, removing a bit of chaos. And sometimes, like we've spoke about, not having a plan allows things to fall into alignment a little bit more, but you've got to be okay with that. Obviously there's stresses that come with that, financial stresses as well, because let's face it, maybe we'd all like to go off and just create, but paychecks don't come through the door that way. So there's your first challenge, isn't it? So because those financial handcuffs can stop us from ever really doing what we want to do. So I think that's the biggest challenge. I don't know if you agree, but it's like, how do I balance paying the mortgage, putting food on the table, and writing for fun?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's always at the back of my mind and the front of my mind, I guess, in that, which is why I was very clear I didn't want to go back into events even once the events industry opened. Well, certainly not from creating an agency again, not from that point of view. But I'm doing freelancing for other people in terms of helping them pull together their events, at least telling them what they've got to do and helping them that way. But I'm also freelancing just from a general kind of business point of view, helping other owner managers who, and I know you'll relate to this, it's sort of that kind of person who's, lonely is the head that wears the crown kind of thing. When there's one of you, as opposed to a board of people who you can bounce decisions off, it can be really challenging sometimes. So having someone to talk to and bounce ideas off and come up with strategies, or rather, I don't even come up with strategies. That's the point. I'm not a coach in that sense. There's a lot of listening, so I might even ask someone to talk about their business for 45 minutes non-stop, and you won't interrupt them at all. And the first 15 minutes are quite all over the place, and then they begin to get into a bit of a rhythm and a routine themselves, and all of a sudden there's stuff coming out that actually we can work with this. That's something that can be addressed. That can be addressed.
Yeah, and my my short experience with events, because I did an event for 4 years ago in Stratford at the Royal Shakespeare. It was a good event. We were talking about mental health, and we had Simon Thomas come down and do a talk, and it was great. But fuck me, it was stressful.
Yeah.
So I can imagine dodgy ticker and events, stressful events, probably don't run in alignment very well with each other. So I think anything, Carl, where you're dealing with client communication and client relationships is tough, because I know when I was running the event, I wanted everything to run perfectly. So I was, of course, nagging the team, putting pressure on them, making sure, because you want to put on a good event. People are buying tickets. You want, and you've got a reputation. But business is tough because, like you say, if you're on your own, it's lonely. But you're on your own, so you haven't got the stresses of staff. But like I say, it's all on you, and it's lonely as hell. Having staff is nice, but guess what? Having staff comes with some blooming big stresses, man. Headaches. So business is business, and it's tough. But I wouldn't have it any other way, I don't think. But maybe, I'm not sure. Like you say, the creative juices take over sometimes. But I don't know whether you experienced any kind of like embarrassment when you were telling people you were writing. It's still something I struggle to get past. Like, it's not a job, but I'd like to do it all the time.
Yeah, it was there came a moment where once I decided I was going to turn it into a book, and went on an enormous editing mission, and had to learn about publishing and all that kind of stuff. There comes a point where you've actually got to tell the world that you got to like birth it. You've got to share it. And sure. The first time I composed a post to put on Facebook, oh my God, I think it sat there for about 4 days before I actually hit it, because my feeling was that people are going to go, what? Who does he think he is? An author? You're not an author. Why? Who do you think's interested in your story? Or why have you got any ability to write? All of the negative self-talk that stops us doing all this kind of stuff was all there, and it just it gets to that point where you just, as we said before, you've got to do the action and go press.
But I would imagine after you died for 11 minutes, surely you don't give a fuck anymore about that kind of stuff, right? Because perspective is a superpower, is on the front of your book, and I'm guessing now that your perspective has shifted slightly since that event.
You're absolutely right, and that conflicted me, and that really annoyed me. That really annoyed me, and that this is what I'm saying in my bloody book, and yet here I am going, oh my God. It really, really irritated me. And so I had to take myself to one side and have a little conversation with myself.
Sure. But you're human as well. Like, I think those things are always going to be there. But look, the fact that the book's there and it's in a physical copy means that you got past it.
Yeah.
So, but it takes courage to follow your dreams and your heart. It really does take, a hell of a lot of guts to pursue what you want to pursue. And I used to think that, telling myself that other people wouldn't think I was a waste of time being an author and that. Do you know what? I thought, actually, Alex, they probably will, and they might. And you have to be okay with that. I think, I don't know whether this is just experience, Carl, or age or what, but I think when you get to a certain point, you know yourself better than most. You know yourself better than anyone. And you're kind of willing to take the criticism. I think part of leading a successful and happy life is being okay with being criticized. And I can't think of many more things than writing a book that puts you in the firing line of criticism. So, any random person could turn up on Amazon and tear you to bits and say your book is shite. It doesn't make sense. There's spelling mistakes in it. Who does this guy think he is? This guy's not an author. This was terrible. This was a waste of money. Do you know what I mean? You could get all of that instantly, and you will get all of that.
Yeah.
And I think part of the journey is having the yeah, having the resilience to be okay with that. Yeah, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's I think it'll be unnatural if that doesn't happen. You know, that would be a very unusual state of affairs. In fact, somebody I know who's written quite a few books said to me, it's really important that your book upsets a few people, so that you're not, it's not a vanilla kind of beige production. You've got to have some opinions and thoughts that are original and might upset a few people. And I almost need that to happen, just to say that's okay, that's fine, that's absolutely fine. That's your opinion.
I can't see what would be in there that would cause any offense or upset people, if I'm honest. It's just your personal story, and I can't believe we've found ourselves in this age where people are so fixated on looking for things that they might find offensive or upsetting.
We are, aren't we? Though that is where we're at. That is, it's almost like, I think I call it porn outrage. People are looking for things to be outraged about.
But why? It doesn't serve anybody, and it's really conflicting. So you can't talk about mental health and problems in the world without having difficult conversations. But that's exactly what we're trying to rule out now. We're trying to eliminate open conversation and debate and challenging conversation. So how do you ever sort big problems out without going down that road of conversation? Like, you can't do it. So it's the worst strategy possible if you're trying to make the world a better place. It's not being made a better place right now. It's not. It's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. And a large part of that comes through social media, doesn't it? It's never been easier to be connected, and yet people are really quite disconnected.
Yes. I don't know how it would have panned out had social media not come along. Like you said, there's pros and cons to it, but I don't know how we get out of this situation now, like you say, where how do you encourage people not to look for things to be offended by? How do you, on one hand, encourage the truth? Because the truth always used to be the answer, didn't it? Like, that was what we're all about. If you're a good, decent person, you're truthful, you're honest. But that's not the case. If you're honest and truthful now, you will get punished.
Yeah.
Won't you? You will get punished. You will get attacked heavily. And everything's taken out of context these days. People are scared to say anything. Even on these podcasts now, before you speak now, you just have to think about everything. You have to be a bit more strategic with your words. Even though, like, inside of me, I know that there's not a racist part of me, or if there is, it's through human nature. It's not through nasty intent or anything. And by a small slip of language, you could get completely attacked, deplatformed, and everything, even if there's no malicious intent. So it stops people wanting to do these kind of things or writing books. So again, we're talking about creativity being one of the best things to do for a fulfilling life. But now creativity is being crushed because you can be creative, but don't fucking say this, don't do that. And or how much creativity is in there?
Well, yeah, there seems to be a real big push at the moment on authenticity. It's really important that you're authentic. As long as your authenticity agrees with mine, and you don't disagree. And the other one, of course, is that if someone posts something that they're incredibly offended about, it's offensive if other people aren't offended. It's like, well, if you're not offended like me, then I'm offended at you.
Sure. Yeah, that's happening a lot. That's happening a lot right now. The vaccine one is a great example.
Yeah.
And masks, people getting, really angry at people who wear masks, people getting angry at people who don't wear masks. The authenticity thing, authenticity is dead, in my opinion. Like, you can't, like, if you have a look back through history, like, all the greatest characters, they are that. They're characters. So even in the sporting world, like, who do we all love? Like, let's look at, I don't know, darts and snooker. And we love Alex Higgins, Jimmy White, all these characters that weren't dead straight and dead clean. They had an edge about them. Same with any kind of rock. That's what we like. They're different. I think that will be a thing of the past. I don't think we'll have many characters. I think most people will be the same. And you'll have to be the same if you want to fit in with this world. If you don't, there's no place for you, and that's quite concerning. And I think growing up as a youngster in this world is quite a tough time. And even just any age now, it's like, well, what are the rules? Because they're so conflicting. I don't know how to behave. I don't know whether to be honest, whether to shut up. If you stand up for something like the Canadian truckers, guess what? We're gonna fucking hurt you this way.
Yeah.
So is there a place in the world now where you can stand up and speak your mind? I'm like, I'm not sure.
No, honestly, I don't think there is. The answer is keep your head down and stay mainstream, which is kind of what I really, really didn't want to do with this book. And my wife was really concerned about oversharing. It's like you're sharing far too much. Keep some of this hidden. Keep your head down. And it was like, no, if I'm going to do it, I feel like I've got to take the piss out myself. I've got to, show the lows and the vulnerabilities. And it was a bit of a risk. And I guess because it's my story, I'm allowed to do that. But if people want to put their own creative work out there, that's kind of, just out of their head or whatever, that's far more challenging. Far more challenging.
Yeah, I didn't get any of that from your book. I thought it was fantastic. I thought there was a great mix of, like you say, you showed your vulnerable side, you showed the strengths that you had. It was funny. I thought it was perfectly played. I don't think anyone wants to read a book that isn't out there and open and honest. Like secretly, I think that's what we all crave. Like we all want to relate, and we relate to suffering more than we do success. So, like, I want to hear about the shit that you went through, and I want to, and I enjoyed it in a strange way. It's like, but it's real. Like, and you talk about things that are going to happen to all of us. We're all going to experience that. And yeah, it might be a difficult read in terms of it's emotionally tough. Like, I was challenged by the fact that you were writing about your mom and how frail she was and things like that. But there's no part of me that would think, well, this guy shouldn't be writing about it. It's difficult to read, sure, but it's true. And my friend Jeff Thompson always said to me, Alex, if you're ever going to write a book, if it's not honest, don't fucking bother. And I think that approach about anything you do should be hopefully delivered with honesty. And if we can keep that, and honesty doesn't get suffocated, then better. But yeah, keeping your head down is a good strategy. But it's also, if everyone keeps their head down, I'm not sure anything really gets challenged, and then nothing gets changed. So it's like, do you be one of those men that steps up and accepts the consequences, no matter what they are, by speaking the truth, or do you comply? Do you live that life? Because let's face it, it's an easier thing to do, and I'm guilty. I got the vaccines no problem because I wanted to fly to Iceland.
Yep.
Well, I complied. I didn't put up a fight. I might have had a little moan, but I was like, for fuck's sake, I've got to get these vaccines to fly. But guess what? I got my vaccines and flied.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I guess it was brought into sharp focus for me in that, that whole thing of realizing what a really short life we've got. The Earth's been around for billions of years. God knows how many billions of people have walked on it. And then there's us, you and me now. And then there's going to be billions more after us for billions of years. So, we just get a little go now. So with whatever's left, you might as well just be you. To a reasonable degree, into as long as you're not hurting other people, just be you.
I think the way they demonstrate this in time perspective is if you get a full-size football pitch, like our lifespan is like a blade of grass, like in comparison to the timeline since the Earth evolved. It's minute. We are here for, like you say, a blink of an eye. And that's why I think asking these tough questions is important. So you can let life pass you by. I think it's good to stop and ask, what am I doing with my life? How am I behaving? Am I being the kind of man that I want to be? So one of the things I've learned is that, like, having goals is great, and I'm a supporter of having goals, but more about behaviors and just being able to put your head on the pillow at night and feel like you're a decent human being. And often that doesn't come through achievement. It comes through, like I say, day-to-day behaviors, how you treat people. All that's far more important. It's the who you become journey versus what you get. So, I could have the nice car parked outside and make the money in the business, but I could still be a prick, and which is going to make me feel better? Well, actually, it's going to be the decent human being.
Yeah.
Might have a couple of zeros less in the bank account. I'm fine with that. And I think you start to discover through life, don't you, of what's important. So we'll wrap this up in a minute, but I really want to pick your brains on this for the last part. And the perspective is a superpower is something that's on the front of your book. And I think you're probably the perfect man to ask this. Like, how has your perspective in all areas of life changed since your heart stopped for 11 minutes, your mum died quite suddenly, and your business shut down, and now finding yourself at 53 with no real clear path? Like, what's your perspective on life now, and how has it shifted since before pre-cardiac?
Hey, well, first of all, I'm alive. I'm alive to even think about those issues, which, that's got to be a great starting point. But also, I think that, the perspective angle of it, I try to convey, I guess, with that shitometer scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is if you're already dead, and 1 is not much at all. Where do life's challenges and life is meant to be a struggle. There is no kind of happy coast along version of life. There are meant to be challenges in life. That's a given. But it's having the perspective to go, well, where do these lie, and can I manage them? And the answer is almost always yes, you can manage them, and they're not as bad as those 4 a.m. demons will have you believe. So I guess it's the ability to look at whatever else comes ahead, with context. So, for example, when I had to close the business, so many people say, "Oh, this is absolutely terrible, absolutely, awful." And I almost felt wrong to be saying it is, and I'm having to let all these people go and all my 15 years hard work and all that. But it's not the worst thing that's happened to me. It almost felt wrong saying that. But that was the kind of perspective that I had. And once you get that into your head, then you can deal things a lot easier, a lot more rationally. I think that's alongside the celebrating the small wins.
Yeah,
is really two-pronged.
So what do you have now, like this new approach to life, or are you taking it day by day, or are you thinking I'm going to do something big and epic and squeeze the most out of every day? Or is there more contentment, more calm, more I'm just going to be? What's changed in that sense?
I've got things to do. It's not that I'm sat around looking at sunrises and sunsets, but there is a lot more contentment, without a shadow of a doubt. There's definitely a lot more contentment, and I think that's something I never really gave myself a chance to enjoy or consider previously, because everything was a million miles an hour with the business.
Yeah, I wondered if your urgency had been increased now versus contentment, because obviously I haven't experienced what you've experienced. I didn't know whether it would make you turn up the gas a bit and go, right.
No, it's not for me. No, it's not. And I'm not seeking anything. I didn't want to become a hedonist, move to Ibiza. I didn't want to go to Tibet and become a monk. It was literally just trying to find ways of doing more of what I enjoy. I enjoy walks, long, hill walks. I enjoy cycling. So it's finding time for that kind of stuff. Finding more time for friends, spending more time with my brother. We should spend far more time together. he's on the East Coast, Grimsby, but it's 2 hours away. We should, it's no distance at all. We should spend more time to get there. And it's just planning. It's just making sure that you do it.
I agree. Acting. Yeah, something me and my friends do now at the start of the year, we put the dates in the diary for the entire year. Otherwise, we could go 2 years without seeing each other, no problem. Same with my mum and dad. We have Mum and Dad Thursday now, we call it. It's like every Thursday. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like, so my perspective has changed, is that my personal values now become before my business values. So what I do is, if you take a big schedule, I'd say, right, well, what's really important to me? Well, my health is my number one, because without that, I'm fucked. So gym time. What else? Family and friends, plot. And then whatever's left, I'll dedicate to my business. And that's how I squeeze the most out of my week. But that's a hard shift, because, that little voice in your head says, no, you should be working more. You should be working harder.
Yeah.
And then you start to question, why? Like, why? Because if I make a success of my business, guess what I'd do with all the money? I'd do the things that I'm going to do anyway, which is, go on holiday and spend time with my friends and family. So it's like, that's it. You just get a little bit, maybe a cheaper car, downgrade of a car, maybe a house with a less bedroom, and that's it. So yeah, it always makes me question why people work so hard. It's to get the things that they could have anyway.
Yeah. And if that's what you mean by squeezing the most out of, then I'm probably not doing that. I'm not, running around at 1,000,000 miles an hour trying to fit so many more other things in. But what I'm doing is enjoying the work that I'm doing more, and I'm enjoying my my non-work time more.
Yeah, I mean, God, like, who am I to say that what the right or wrong way to approach a day or a week is? I don't know, but I always look at it. I can be quite cynical sometimes about life, so I always look at it from like, well, when everything's torn apart from me, or if things did fall apart, what would I miss most? And the business, like you found out, like you survived the business collapse. Like, it's not you. Like, Karl Perry is not his business. Like, the better man is not Alex Myers. Like, they're separate things. So like, if the better man dies or your events company dies, like, you survive.
Yeah, I did. Although, again, throughout that whole process, I had realized that, I tethered an awful lot of what I thought was my identity to that business.
Oh, sure. Yeah, for sure. But that's the danger, isn't it? I think that's where, when building a business, like, especially on the level that I'm at, so I don't want to take over the world. So I'm not an Elon Musk, I'm not, and it might be different for somebody like that, but I'm just trying to make, do a great job, help people out. But I try not to let it be my be all and everything, because it can't be, because there's too much other things in life to be grateful and important for. So I kind of try, but this is what we're talking about, perspective. And this hasn't come overnight, and I'm not brilliant at this. I have to journal every morning and remind myself.
Yeah.
Like, Alex, yeah, absolutely. So tomorrow is Thursday. Already I'm thinking, well, I've got work to do. But what I don't want to be doing when I'm with my mum and dad is be stressing about work, which has just started to creep in again. So I have to remind myself constantly about what's really important. I have to, otherwise I will be working again on that Thursday, Carl. Trust me. Yeah. My mum and dad are, 68. So who knows?
Cherish them.
Well, exactly right. So it's like, well, we know that, but you've got to fucking back it up.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We know what's important, but you only really know what's important to somebody by their actions. So I can say all day long, oh, this is important and that's important, but like, you have to look at how you're spending your time. That's the only thing that will really show you. This is where words mean very, very little, and our actions have to back it up. And I think when we're talking about quality of life, I think if you can get to the end of the day knowing that you've lived in alignment with those values, then I think you can live a happier life, even if it means less money, even if it means less material things. I feel anyway, and I've experienced some pretty depressive times, and so on. And I've had a lot more money in the past previously to what I've had now. So I kind of know that it isn't the be all and end all, your bank account. So I think it's just that. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it helps. Going to Iceland for 6 weeks. It's not cheap, mate, but it's, what else am I going to spend it on?
Honestly, I think it's my one of the most favorite places in the world. for me.
Why? Because I can't explain it to people. People are going, "Why are you going there?" And I'm like, "Do you know what? I don't know. It's just somewhere I went that just felt really comfortable, and it's calling me to go back."
I've been there 6 times now.
Oh wow!
With all with work, all based on
Your
taking
Christmas fucking dues were insane. I took my guys to Zizi's. You took yours to Oslo.
Yeah, they were kind of legendary. We used to really look forward to those kinds of things. We never got to Iceland as a work group. We went. Some of the events we organised were incentive trips.
Okay.
Top performers in whatever field. And we'd take them there. And I think that what I love about the place is as soon as you get there, you notice there's something spiritually different. There's something about the landscape. There's something about the people. It just feels like this is like almost like a fairy tale kind of environment. The buildings look different. People cook out of geysers, and it's like, oh, this is mad.
Yeah, I got that magic, that strange, this isn't real feeling. Like this is some, crazy thing that you'd see on a film. It was strange. Yeah. I'm lucky enough to be able to. I've kind of like my mum and dad are going to come over for a week. I've been able to sort that out for them, so I get to involve. This is what I mean. Like sometimes you can get your values to merge together. So being in Iceland for me means I can work from anywhere in the world, which was one of my values. Freedom, adventure. I can have fun when I'm out there. Fun is something that I haven't always kind of managed to fit into my life, and I can make the life of my family and friends better by getting them involved in it. So I think sometimes things start to align. You're like, oh, I can do what I love to do. I can not be crushed by work. I can get my family involved. I can tick all the boxes. And I think this is probably the first time in my life where I'm starting to realize that these are the things I need to do to live an okay and happy life.
Yeah.
Where things fit and I can still earn money. I can still have fun. I can still have adventure, and I'm not tied down by the 9-to-5 hustle. So I'm really excited. And I didn't know, I guess you stayed in Reykjavik, yeah? Or Reykjavik.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, we did. I guess they are the touristy spot because we were only there for sort of 3, maybe 4 days each time.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone wants to see and do.
Of course.
But you still get it's not a huge place, is it? I mean, I think the population is something like the same as Stoke.
It's the same as Coventry, I know that. So it's 330,000 people, I think.
Yeah. And they've got their own currency. Can you imagine if Coventry said, right, we're going to have our own currency now?
Yeah.
It's like, what? That's mad. Why would you do that? But
it's
just a surreal, beautiful, spiritual kind of place. Even the architecture. You look at those cathedrals and the churches. They're like they've just risen out of the ground.
I know, I've made a little promise to myself. I'm going to try not to moan about the price of beer when I'm over there.
Yeah, you will not get through 6 weeks without moaning about the price of beer.
It's all me and my dad have spoke about. Basically, we've done the maths, and I've got an app for in Iceland where every bar that has happy hour. So basically, we'll be out at like 12 in the afternoon instead of 12 at night. But that's fine. So you get like, I think it works out about £7 a beer at happy hour. So
what's happy hour?
Yeah, it's about, I think you can pay anywhere between 11 and 15 quid for a pint. But yeah, it might be a good thing because I don't want to spend all my money on beer.
No, that's very true. Well, you're going to the right place then. I tell you what, though, just my most favourite story of Iceland was my first trip there. And you know how a lot of the bars are really small and kooky and kind of, no bar looks the same as the one before.
Yeah.
We went into this bar and it was kind of an oldish guy serving behind the bar, bit scruffy looking, grunting, but he looked kind of familiar. He looked like I feel like I know him from somewhere. And as I was getting this round in for these people, it dawned on me it was Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford at that time owned a couple of bars in Reykjavik.
No way.
He'd pop over and he'd put in a few hours behind the bar. That's his way of kind of just like, it was like, I've just been served by Indiana Jones.
That's class.
That is phenomenal.
That's awesome. Yeah. What was the bar called?
Oh, God knows. Can't remember.
Do you know any of the bars off the top of your head? No.
Not the last time I was there was, I think, 2012. So,
okay. Yeah. So yeah, they're still fresh in my head because I went in October, so things are still fresh in my head. There's a great street where there's an English bar, American. See, I'm a typical Brit, man. I go to these places and I see an English bar, and I'm like, I'm there. And then there's an American bar next to it and an Irish bar. But yeah, it's a great little place. And like you say, it's hard to describe to people, but it's just, it feels quite freeing. And you get a lot of Americans there. You got a lot of Italians, Germans, and people are just passing through to have a nice time. You know, you don't really sense politics much or military talk over there. It's none of that kind of shit, which is one of the dull things about living in the UK. It's heavily, you know, talks heavily on politics and stuff like that, which I can't say I enjoy too much. So yeah, it's cool. So I'm glad you've been there. But anyway, Mr. Karl Perry, it was it was cool as fuck talking to you. You're a badass, mate. I like you. You're a good guy, and I just want to point this book out to anyone listening. You Only Live Thrice. I thought it was a fantastic. I read a lot of books, and that's been one of my favorite books that I've read for quite a long time. So really, thank you for writing it. It was great.
Really appreciate it, Alex. Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
No problem. It was a pleasure. So yeah, thank you for sharing your story, and thank you for coming on and talking to me. I really enjoyed that. I could do more, but we've done an hour and a half now. So yeah, I think we're there, mate. Okay.
Understand. Yeah, great stuff.
Karl Perry, thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.
Karl Perry, thank you, mate. Oh, let me just end this, mate. 1 second. Oh, we're still live. Oh, here we go. End broadcast. There we go. We're officially going now.